Good evening. My name is Kelly Carroll, and I have the pleasure of chairing Bennington's Community Policing Advisory Review Board. Today is Thursday, May 18th, 2023, and we are located in the third floor multi-purpose room of the Bennington Firehouse. We do not have any AV this evening, so I am going to ask that if anyone is speaking or when someone is speaking to make sure that it's loud and clear so that CAT TV can pick it up. So again, my name is Kelly Carroll, and I'm going to ask my board members to also introduce, and we'll start down here.
Scott Richmond, Jeff Vickers,
Will Greer, Marsh Hudson Knapp,
Robert Ebert.
We also have our select board liaison, Tom Haley, and Jim Byers on CAT TV, who we're very grateful for covering. So when we get started tonight, Robert, would you please read the town vision statement?
I would be happy to. Vision statement for the town of Bennington. Bennington is a welcoming, engaged, inclusive, and resilient community where everyone, regardless of identity, shares in our vitality and benefits from an outstanding quality of life.
Thank you. The agenda and the previous meeting minutes were sent out ahead of time. Can I please get a motion to accept?
I'll make that motion.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
I'm sorry, I made the motion. I made the motion. Can you make me second it?
Jeff.
Vickers. Thank you.
All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? Okay. So passed. Next we have public comment. And I don't think we had anybody that signed up for public comment, so I just want to check and see if we have any additions. So next on the agenda is the Bennington Police Department, and we have Lieutenant Camilo Brandy here, who is going to speak with us about recruitment and retention. And I just want to thank you. I know that there have been a lot of overdoses. There's been a lot of very traumatic, dangerous things that have been happening in the last month or so, well, more than the last month or so. So thank you to you and the entire BPD department for everything that you've been doing in the name of public safety, and for dealing with the, I don't know, I lost track of 12 overdoses. So I just thank you to the officers who are dealing with that trauma on a day-to-day basis.
Well, thank you for saying that. Thank you for giving me an opportunity to come speak to the board and speak to the public. I appreciate your time and your comments. Yeah, it's things are busy lately. You know, we've had a lot of major in-depth investigations that have created a lot of investigative hours. And then it kind of goes to what we're talking about here today, recruitment and retention. And, you know, the staff at the Bennington Police Department does an amazing job every single day. I'm amazed at the work that they do day in and day out, coming to work already behind with their calls for service and some of their reports, and they still meet the needs of the community. And we're very, very fortunate to have the staff that we have and that work every day, day in, day out in the police department. So, yeah, I'm here to talk about recruitment and then retention and our staffing levels. And, you know, recruitment is a challenge. It's a huge challenge for law enforcement, not only, you know, here in Bennington, Vermont, but it's a huge challenge throughout the country. Trying to find people that want a vocation in law enforcement is not like it was when I started. When I started in 1993, you know, I was waitlisted because there was so many people that wanted to do this job. I was waitlisted. And then I was fortunately to get hired by the Sheriff's Department And eventually, in '98, I made it to the Bennington Police Department. There's, over the years working there, there was always a list of candidates that wanted this position, wanted a position with the Bennington Police Department. We didn't have the openings. So, fast forward to 2023, and things are a little different in law enforcement, and we're asking our people to do a whole lot more with a lot less, and it's difficult to recruit people. We have, I don't know if any of you have been on the Vermont Police Academy website. I know the Chief Cassette has talked about that before. Currently, if you check that website, there are 61 departments in the state of Vermont they're actively searching for positions, law enforcement positions. Over 60. I didn't think that there was that many in the state. And that should just kind of tell you, where we are here in Vermont. We continue always trying to recruit and find good candidates. We work with our communications coordinator Jonah Spivak, and we created a recruitment poster with his assistants. That recruitment poster has gone to colleges that have criminal justice programs, as far as Florida State University. Jonah continues to send those out with the hopes of recruiting outside of Vermont. We take that recruitment poster, we put it on our social media platform. We do see some people interested through those two methods. We have our website. We've had our last hire was through seeing it on our website and seeing some of the things that that we do here at Bennington Police that drew her to applying to the Bennington Police. And she is on her way through her training, and I'll get to that. We have such a innovative team within our ranks. It's not just the job of the lieutenant and the police chief to go out and try to find qualified candidates. We have, officers who are dedicated to trying to find additional help to increase our staffing levels. We had 2 officers who took it upon themselves to create a recruitment team. They now go out to colleges for college fairs. They've been to the chief and I have been to Castleton State College for their career fair day with one of our new officers, and then these 2 other officers who started this recruitment drive. This is something that they did on their own. Sometimes they volunteer their own time. They go on their days off. Because they know it's important to increase staff levels at the Bennington Police Department. Recently, Corporal Diop, Officer Jones, and Officer Madigan attended a career fair at the Hudson Valley Community College. They did a wonderful presentation. They brought themselves a TV, and they had a reel on it, so to entice people to their booth. And then they engaged in conversations with students that are going to be graduating, if they haven't already graduated this year. Out of that, they handed out, I believe they told me, 6 applications. Now, whether or not those have actually made it into the department, I don't know. But they were very, very positive about those people that they talked to. We recently had interviews last week, and we're continuing to look at those candidates and see if those are going to be viable candidates. So we're progressing with them. We have updated meetings coming up with them, and hopefully they'll progress through the process. Any questions on recruitment? Kind of went through it really fast.
I saw some of the, on the website, I think it was the town's website, the Hudson Valley.
That's correct.
There was some pictures from the Hudson Valley Job Fair. That was good.
That's one of the things we ask the officers to do when they attend these career fairs, to make sure that someone snaps a picture with their cell phone so we can put that up on our social media platform, and it just to entice more interest, and so the public knows what our officers are doing when they're out there doing this extra. And all three of those, that one you're talking about, all three of those officers volunteered their time to go do that. To me, that just shows the level of commitment these officers have to the betterment of not only our police department but our community.
Should we, you would ask this one, should we ask recruitment questions now, or just wait until he's done and ask all of our questions?
Sure.
Okay, well, I think Jeff has that.
Well, I just was going to ask, so you said they volunteered their time. Do you have a line in the budget for recruiting?
We do not.
Can you?
I
Would you have to cut something else?
Yeah, we're always trying to be fiscally responsible with the budget.
Sure.
This is something that they wanted to do. It was very, very important to them. It came to them. They had just done one. They wanted to do back-to-backs.
Yeah.
And we also have to think about employee wellness and making sure that we're keeping their hours down as much as possible. And they took it upon themselves to do this.
Well, I was just going to ask, if you can't budget money, which I think it would be for advertising or materials or whatever you need to do in general, and some of this is coming from, like, it being in the fire department and understanding the challenges there as well, I would think it would be just as important for you to have some funds available for that. And then if you can't pay the people for volunteering, is there a way to give them comp time or some other thing to make it to where maybe more people, so you don't want to burn out a handful of people even though they're eager to do it, and that's appreciated. I would think if you could get more people involved, it would be easier on everybody, but
It's tough. And I understand exactly where you're coming from. This originally started with just 2 officers.
yeah.
And these 2 officers went around and were showing other officers in the communications center what they were doing and what they saw.
Yeah.
And the other officer wanted to attend the next one. But
Okay.
we also have to be very careful about our budget.
Yeah.
So, and again, employee wellness, but they wanted to do this, so we allowed them to do it.
So,
Normally they get paid.
Okay.
so I just have 2 questions. The first one is for Tom. When it comes to, and you may not know this is more of a Stu question, but when it comes to recruitment charges and, advertising and everything, is that something that the town does in their big budget, or is it allocated out to different departments like BPD, building and grounds, or
Any money spent by any particular department is
is allocated to that
yes, in
specific
their own
department?
particular budgets.
Okay, all right. So, and then this is just me, the way I think. And I very, very much appreciate that the officers volunteer their time. I think that shows dedication, initiative, very, very appreciative. But there's that legal little voice that's saying, what if? Because in my world, I plan for the worst and hope for the best. So what if they were doing that on their time and say somebody runs a red light and hits them and they get hurt or something is there, are they allowed to do that with a working agreement? And again, I appreciate it and commend it. I don't want to be, like a negative, but I'm just, and I know their time is their time, but.
We have officers volunteering their time a lot of times, and not doing law enforcement work, but you see us at all types of community events that we're volunteering our time.
Okay, all right.
But I understand your concern
I'm
at where
just,
you're
I'm
coming
worried
from.
about them being
But
protected.
this is, I understand where you're coming from.
But, yeah, because I'm just thinking if something, and I don't want to jinx it, but if there were an accident, if they were on the clock, it would be a workman's comp, they would be protected, and so, anyway, just a. Okay. Robert, did you have a
Yeah,
question?
got a few. On that, real quick, the volunteers who went to the job fair, are they in uniform?
There.
They are. Other officers who volunteer their time for other, say, community activities, are they in uniform?
Sometimes.
Sometimes, okay. Is the Bennington Police Department competitive with other departments, we'll say, as far as compensation to attract people?
I think that will, I kind of was gonna touch on that in my retention part.
Okay.
But can we circle back to that one?
Yeah.
And then, if I didn't answer it, I will try.
Okay. Have you noticed throughout your career that the motivations that people have for wanting to become a police officer have changed? I mean, it seems back in the day it was to protect and serve for the community. Has that shifted over the years, or are they looking for something different from a career in the police department?
I think that the law enforcement image has shifted, numerous times. I don't have to tell you that everything you see on the nightly news or wherever your social media platforms is always have something about law enforcement and really kind of spends a lot of time on the negative and not enough time on the positive. And I think that that's a bad message. I think that talking about the bad things are important so we can learn from them so they don't repeat themselves. But we never spend enough time talking about all the great work that's being accomplished 99% of the time.
Okay. So these days, I mean, what is the motivation of an applicant? Just looking for a good kind of civil service job with good pay and good benefits, or they want to be part of their community, or do you have any idea?
I think when someone gets into law enforcement, it's about serving. It's about serving their community, and most young recruits are not really looking at maybe the benefit aspect, maybe a little bit, but to get into this field, knowing that there's a lot of negativity around it right now, I think the tide is turning. There's a lot of positive changes that are being made, and I just think it's just a difficult time. There has to be a reason why there's law enforcement agencies all across the country that are, critically understaffed, and not being able to meet the needs of some of the communities they serve. I'm not quite sure, why someone, what the generation now is looking at. There's all kinds of studies on this. I've been doing a lot of trainings on these. And I think some of it is financial, but mostly I do believe, you served, it's about serving their community.
Okay, great. Just two more real quick. Can you tell us what aspects of your recruitment program, drive, I'm not sure what you would call it, are geared towards women in protected classes?
That's a good question. I think that, making sure that people understand what we are about and what we do, and getting that out on social media, and getting out there and talking to people. The last two hires that we had are female, and both of them, one of them was attracted through our social media and saw what we were doing and saw what we were about. And the other one worked closely with our law enforcement officers in a professional way, and decided that she wanted to change her career path and come to work for Bennington Police because she was working with officers on a pretty much daily basis in the job that she held, and knew it was a place that she wanted to come to work for.
Okay, great. Just one more. You said you had worked for the Sheriff's Department before, and then you eventually made it to BPD, Bennington Police Department, which gave me the impression that, at least for you, that was considered a step up. Could you kind of tell the difference between the sheriff's department and a municipal police department? That one would be considered better than the other?
I would never, ever take away from my time with the sheriff's department, because I had a lot of wonderful experiences, and I was able to meet a lot of wonderful people. You know, community, county law enforcement versus municipal law enforcement is just different, at least in the state of Vermont.
Right.
You know, we are, you know, for me, I worked with, when I started, way back when, you know, we did all kinds of things with the sheriff's department. I worked in several different communities before I was promoted, and then I eventually came to the Bennington Police Department. You know, being able to work with the, you know, National Guard back then, marijuana eradication, you know, that was huge back in the early 90s. And working with them and some of the other, you know, I worked in the schools for a while. I had a lot of wonderful experience, and I'm going to tell you, the most I ever learned when I was with the sheriff's department are my times that I worked in the courthouse. So you had to work in the courthouse, you know, you started with traffic, you end up working in the courthouse, and then eventually you made it to patrol. And I spent a lot of time working in the criminal courts and working with lawyers and judges and prosecutors and defense attorneys. And I got to tell you, listening to them and all, and being there, I learned a lot about law. I learned a lot about people, and I learned about what you should do and what you shouldn't do for criminal cases.
Okay.
So there is a huge difference between county law enforcement and municipal law enforcement.
Okay, thank you.
I had a clarifying question. When you were talking about you said that you guys gave out 6 applications that you seemed pretty positive about, but how many people did you say are going through the application process right now?
Right now, I think that we're looking at 3.
That's what I thought. Okay, thank you.
I have a couple more. How many openings do you have right now?
On paper, 6, but we're down 8. Because the two recruits I was talking about, the 2 females we just hired, they are not considered a patrol officer at this time until they're completed their training. And they go off to training. They're doing the first phase of their training right now. Well, actually the second phase. They're doing their field training from, they're level 2 certified now. They're doing their field training, getting as much experience now until the academy starts in August. And then they'll go to the academy in August and do their level 3 training. And that will be, 17 weeks there. And then they'll return just before the beginning of the new year.
Okay. And then, when you go to the job fairs, and I guess it's kind of 2 more questions, do you struggle with non-officer positions as well, dispatcher, office, support staff? Is that equally, and do you do that when you're recruiting as well, or is it just mainly police officers?
So no, it's not. The communications center has its ups and downs, just like on the law enforcement. It's a little easier to get the training. The training is not as long for communications department, although right now we are. I don't want to say it. We're in pretty good shape right now in the communications department. But we struggled there for a while with some vacancies in that department. But they are the communications. I think I've told all of you during your training phases that is one of the most important jobs in that department. I would never, ever, ever want to be a communications operator. It is the toughest job in that department. They have a lot to do, very little resources. They don't have anybody that comes and backs them up like we do if we're on the field. If an officer calls for help, someone's coming from somewhere. Communication specialists, they're all by themselves. So, but right now we're in pretty good shape, but yes, that has been a focus before.
Okay.
They do a great job. The communications, they do a great job.
Amazing.
How long is it? So Each officer has to be certified at level 2 to go on the field, is that correct?
Correct. Minimum. That's
And
what,
then
that's
level
what.
3 is 17 weeks at the academy?
So it used to be, we hired somebody and we'd send you off to the academy. And we were hoping that we did such a good job during the hiring phase that you were gonna make it through the academy with no hiccups, and you'd come out 17 weeks and, we have a great, new officer out there. But we changed the way we thought about that process. So what we do now is we hire, we identify a candidate, we get them level 2 certified, and get them the experience on the road, working with our field training officers, and getting them prepared. We prepare them to go into the academy. When I went to the academy, it was, here, go out there, you learn, and then when you came out, here's your cruiser keys, here's your gun, here's your badge, go out and make a difference. We do it a little differently now.
How long does it take to get to level 2?
Level 2 simple.
Simple?
Yes, it's a two-week course, and then you have a litany of post classes that you're supposed to, that you need to take, but usually our people don't have to get all those, because by the time they start at level 3, they're going to get all those level 3.
So once they're level 2,
They have a year to get it done.
okay, once they're level 2, they work with somebody else until they go to the academy, so it'll be 2 people in a cruiser at a time?
That is correct.
Sort of on-the-job training.
That's correct. So as you see right now, if you see a two-person cruiser, that person is in training.
Okay.
Someday I'd like to get to where we ride two people, but that's like, I just want to get it with somebody in every cruiser right now.
So do you find that, since you've switched it up with, the one-on-one training and coaching and more mentoring before, do you think that's helping retention?
I think it's absolutely helps with retention. I think it helps the candidate be successful in the level 3 class. The level 3 class is very intense, and there's a lot of work to be done. I've been through it. I know what it's like. I know it's a little different than when I went through it many years ago. But we want our people. When we identify a candidate and we say, we want you to raise your right hand and be part of our team, we want to make sure we give them all the tools that they can have at their disposal to be successful all the way through their training and beyond.
I think that's a great onboarding, with the one-on-one and having somebody right there to coach and mentor. I think that just, in any industry, I think that helps, with a good orientation program.
Yep, I agree.
Thanks.
So moving on, if there's any other questions on recruitment, and hopefully I'll answer your question and the retention part of it. So retention, it's not a big secret. We've had a lot of turnover. Bennington Police Department is a very, very busy department. You've heard the Chief of Police talk about calls for service, and I'm going to echo it again. In 2022, we had over 13,000 calls for service here in Bennington. 13,000 calls for service for a department less than 26 is a very, very busy department, combined with the amount of investigations we saw in 2022. We've had some high-profile investigations that, take a lot of investigative hours, weeks, months, and, when all those things are happening, like this past weekend, trying to find a missing gentleman, all that work, we had two missing this weekend, and, all that work is being done, and all those other calls are still coming in. Just because we're working a major event doesn't mean the other calls don't stop coming in. I have no idea what that sounds is. I'm starting to get a little worried that my time's running out and you're trying to tell me to get out of here.
I think it's an alien invasion.
So, it is tough. It's tough. Like I said, I'll start this off like I started. It's tough to retain people who come to work already stressed. It is a major concern for the chief and I. we are trying to, we are working on that the best we can to give that, to relieve some of that stress from our rank and file. And there will be more to come in future meetings on that. But, one of the things that we have, the chief and I have discussed is making sure that we do give our time off to people when they request it, and still maintaining a level of service to the community. It's a tough balance, because you want to, I want to give people time off, but we still have to maintain that level of service. So it is a very difficult balance, but I can tell you some of the trainings that the chief and I have been to on retention, specifically retention. We're learning from our law enforcement partners in other parts of the state that they are in such critical staffing levels that they go month to month, and they have closeout dates that you can't put in for time off. They'll close out a week, or they'll close out the entire month. We are not doing that. Sometimes we get a little, worried that we may have to, but we haven't yet to do that. Making sure our people get the time off, we do everything we possibly can. To be competitive, to go to your question, to other law enforcement agencies within our county, as you all know, July 1, BPD employees will receive a increase thanks to the work of the chief and the select board and the town manager. So they're going to be seeing an increase this July 1 that is hopefully going to be a little more competitive to other agencies to the north of us, and trying to show our people that they are important to us, and we would like to do as much as possible. They're also July 1 going to the Plan D retirement system, which is compatible to the agencies within Bennington County. Most of the agencies in Bennington County are already at Plan D, and now that Bennington PD has moved to that July 1, I think that will help us with our retention. And then lastly, with the retention, is that once we are up to a staffing level, gets to the point where we need to be, our patrol officers have asked for 12-hour shifts. We've explored that. We were about to do that, to do a 12-hour shift exploratory. We created a committee, and we were there, and we were almost ready to implement. We lost several officers, which dropped us below where we needed to be in order to have 12-hour shifts and make sure that they were adequate staff. Did I answer your question? Good.
Oh, yeah.
I knew I could get there.
Oh, you answered all.
Yes.
So, Cam, was this Plan B or D? I couldn't.
Plan D.
As in duck?
Yep.
Okay, good.
That's that Vermont Municipal Retirement System.
Okay. The other question I have is about exit interviews. Since we have had a fair number of people exit, tell me about how extensive exit interviews are, and how do you deal with the data you gather from that?
So the exit interview is conducted by Human Resources, and that's part of the officer or employee's personnel record, and I don't have access to it.
So if an officer says, Cam's been calling me dumbbell every day, of course he wouldn't do it because you respect your officers.
I probably wouldn't be here anymore.
No, that's right. This is just an imaginary.
No, I understand.
But if a supervisor was being, giving somebody a hard time and somebody says, I'm going to go work somewhere else, I don't have to take this, is there some way that we all get feedback from that exit interview process?
I do not. As a lieutenant, I do not. The chief of police may, but I do not. And I think that that's a fair question, because exit interviews are very, very important to identify issues. for retention for the employees that still remain. So I mean, I can't answer that on my position, but the chief of police may.
Could you check that out for us? Because that's been.
I would imagine if there was something that came up during an exit interview that, knowing the HR department for the town, that they would do their due diligence and they would follow up on that. So I'm confident that she does that, but.
I do know that I have never, ever heard anybody, say that, oh, Ken Randy was just a horrible lieutenant, he's just not here, or the chief of police is horrible. We hear positive feedback, we don't hear the negative.
But Marcia's question, so, I mean, maybe his example was a
That's a
little too extreme, we're getting a little far. Other than they're pursuing something else, if in the exit interview there was something unsatisfactory to that employee about working for the Bennington Police Department, isn't that something you need to know, to hear?
And the chief may, and he may, but I'm just saying that it doesn't come to my level.
I think we'll just see what he follows up with, and then if we need to, we can also follow up with Michelle. But you do have to remember, personnel issues are, they have to be redacted, and we're limited with what we can see on that, but it's a good point.
I'm not even asking if we can see it. I'm saying people who run the department would need to know if there was a reason someone was leaving because of their experience in the department. Not necessarily a negative supervisor or subordinate thing, but anyway.
Maybe Tom?
I could ask that question and get an answer for the board for next meeting.
Okay, thank you. Any other
I'm not
questions?
doing that right.
Scott?
So, part of the retention, do you have programs in place to help the officers with like mental health wellness?
There was the part where I said that, in the coming months, you're going to start receiving information on that.
Okay.
That's coming.
Okay.
Question.
Good
Going
question.
Back
But
to
they
the,
do, you do have EAP. We've talked about that before. Chief has mentioned that you do have the employee assistance and there's.
But just before I jump to your question, what we've done in the past is no different than the fire department does. And I think that we may have spoken to this board before. We had a very trying first quarter with some pretty significant deaths that took a toll on our officers and took a toll on our communication specialists. A lot in a very short period of time. And there were 3 that one team did in 3 weeks. And it took a toll. And the chief and I both knew that it was taking a toll, and we immediately got them services.
Right, yeah, I know what we see in the fire department is nothing compared to what you guys see, and I know that every once in a while, I gotta call this guy and just talk it through. It's important that you keep your head clear, especially when you guys have to go on all the time.
I think you're going to see on this topic, Chief Doucette talking a little bit more in the future on this very topic. And I don't want to give anything that he wants to present at a later date.
Okay, thank you.
back to my pay question. I'm just curious, I remember back, I don't remember, it might be an outdated number, but I thought you said that the average pay was about $27 an hour? Or is it 21 or something?
It's starting off is about 25.
25.
Just step one is, just coming through the door, not running training, it's about 25.
And so July 1st, is that, do you have an estimated range for what that change is going to be, or can you not
A
disclose
little
that?
over 8%.
8%? Oh, wow. That's
And that, correct me if I'm wrong, is all specified out in the working agreement. But when the town went to do the budget, it was agreed upon at that point that there was going to be an additional incremental increase in addition to the working agreement, and that was approved by the select board.
So the working agreement, I'm not speaking out of school here, the working agreement was recently opened because we knew that the town manager knew and the chief exec knew that we wanted to like I told you at the onset, we have a wonderful staff right now, we just need a little bit more. And they have reopened the contract, and there is verbiage in reopening that contract to, for exactly what we're talking about.
I was wondering, with being understaffed now, does that mean that you have less officers on duty than you'd like to have, or do you require people to work overtime, and is that mandatory?
The way it works, so yes and yes.
Okay.
So the way it works right now is that the minimum that's on staff is 3. That's what we require, 3 officers for all the people in the town of Bennington at any given time. We've had to do a little bit of a hybrid schedule and identified some busy times and not so busy times, and kind of made a couple of hybrid schedules to make sure that we can increase staffing during those increased calls for service times. So right now, it's being covered a lot by overtime. I'll be straight up, the chief and I have been out there covering shifts to make sure that our people, not all the time, but sometimes make sure that people are getting the time off that they need, and making sure there's adequate coverage to the community.
So with that, are they paid at a higher rate for overtime?
Yes,
Is that budgeted, or is that?
there is a line item in our budget for overtime.
So at some point, it seems like that it would be wise to spend money to avoid overtime if possible. It might lead back to kind of my original question about recruiting and retaining. If there's a way to keep people longer or recruit them, even if it costs money, it may be either break even and better for the people, or maybe you come out ahead. I don't know the formula.
We're all working on difficult times right
Yeah.
now. Everything, when we do a budget a year in advance. I don't think anybody could have predicted what, the cost of living was going to be right now. So we have to be fiscally responsible with our budgets.
So then kind of another budget-related question. I assume that the police department pays to train the new people. Is there anything that then they're required a certain amount of time after that to basically protect that investment and not have them go take the training and that's paid for by Bennington and then have them go to another department to make more money?
Yeah, so it's in our working agreement that you have to, that if we're going to invest in you and we want to make you as part of our family or part of our department, then you give us a 3-year commitment.
Okay.
So there is a return on our investment. But what we're seeing on a national trend, and is that most law enforcement officers are moving within 3 to 5 years from their original department. Within 3 to 5 years, most people will move to a different department.
And then I assume you do some sort of succession planning, that you know some people will likely be retiring at some point. Is that factored into your plans as well, that you know you're going to, at a minimum, going to lose X number of people?
Yes. Some things we can't, some things we can't predict. We lost, we lost 2 to the school system. It's difficult to compete with, Monday through Friday, 8 to 4, holidays, weekends, and summers off. We can't compete with that. Nobody can compete with that in municipal government.
And then I've got 2 more. So one was hearing about all the time that they volunteer, but also on the job. And I don't know if it's true or not, but are police officers being asked to do more now than they were maybe in the past when you started? Or is it those people still do the same kind of job? So I guess to get to the point of it is, if they are being asked to do more, do you need more officers to make sure the same level protection is happening if they're doing other stuff that may not be directly that. And maybe that's totally not the case, and they're totally dedicated to the same protections that they've always done there. I don't know.
Well, you know, that is a retention problem, because police are being asked to do more with less. We're asking, you know, you've heard Chief Doucette say this. We've had a lot of discussions about this very topic. You know, when you had, you know, coming out of COVID and having a lot of people, even during COVID and coming out of COVID, you know, I hate using it as an excuse or a crutch, but when we have a lot of people still working from home, and, you know, when other agencies that we work with, that we constantly rely on to do what they're supposed to be doing, when that phone isn't answered, someone always answers our phone. So we are asked to do more. We're asked to, you know, when that phone, you know, when that student doesn't want to go to school and having, you know, a family, mom or dad can't get their student on the bus, we get called, you know, and I'll just give you an example. You know, last week we had a 16-year-old that was refusing to go home. You know, the 16 years old is in that age bracket that's difficult based on our laws, and you know, he was very, very defiant. Wasn't going to go home. Would not go anywhere else, and just wanted to be on their own. And the response that we got was, let that person walk out the front door of your police department. Can't do that. I just, you know, I had officers coming to me and saying, Lieutenant, I can't, in good conscience, just let this person walk out the front door of the police department. And, you know, our officers spent 5 hours with this individual till finally we were able to make some type of arrangement, you know, at 8 o'clock at night. You know, so the police department is doing that. And that is just one story of many, to answer your question.
All right, and my final question, what one thing do you think would improve recruiting and retaining police officers?
Recruiting is tough. You know, like I said before, this national trend, this you know, this making law enforcement look like they're not caring individuals. You know, it's just not accurate. It's not the right narrative. There are bad things that happen within my profession. 100% there are people that should not be doing this job. But you can say that about any job. But as for retention, I think for us, the staff that we have right now want to be there. They want to make a difference. They want to be able to have that time to spend with someone that is in need and needs just that little bit of support. And they want to be able to give that support. And it's very, very difficult to sit down next to someone out on the street that may be struggling, and when your radio is going off and it's nonstop. So if we can get up to have staffing and beyond, so we always have that buffer and really what we should really have, you know, for our department, I think that would make a huge difference with the staff. Being able to, you know, they feel like they're being, you know, one call after another, and, you know, the lieutenant's on them saying, hey, listen, this report is, you know, 30 days old, you gotta get on it. But yet their radio is going off left and right, and they've got to go on to another call before they can even get work done that's 30 days old. I mean, it does, you know, 30 days is extreme, but, you know, it does happen.
Okay, thank you.
So I know that some police agencies, and you and I have had discussions about responding to calls, and you told me, and I'm very pleased to know that you're committed to making sure that every person who calls gets a thoughtful response and a thorough response. And I know some agencies have begun to triage their calls coming in. Is that anything you think about at all, or is that still?
Marsh, as a training officer, I took pride as being a training officer. I take pride in this position. I take pride in my profession. And, what I told you that day is that when I had a new trainee riding with me, I always told them, I started their training time with me, is that you may get a call that you think is the most ridiculous call in the world. But if someone called us, it's important to them. And we need to make sure that we're meeting the needs of that call. I continue that to this day. Even with during our command staff meetings, we have those type of conversations. And I do believe that our people deliver that level of professionalism. Do we fall down sometimes? 100%. Do our people get stressed out and seem curt and seem like they're not giving the time that they should and want to? Sure, because the radio is screaming in their ear and they know they got to get to the next call. It's tough, stressful, and it's tough, and that's where it comes. It's hard to retain people if they're doing that every day. 13,000 calls for service.
That's a lot.
You're talking, if you really do the math, Marsh, we have, I think we're budgeted for 27 police officers. That includes the chief, that includes the lieutenant, that includes the detectives, and the rest are the rank and file, okay, the patrol officers and the supervisors. Now break that down. Those are the people that are handling those day-to-day calls. So now that number from 27 has shrunk down to right now is probably at 12, 13.
So that's 1,000 per person approximately. That's a lot.
So it's stressful. So it's tough. It's difficult to retain people when that stress is constant.
Yep. So I guess that's why the question about triaging calls, I know some agencies have felt like they had to make choices about who they're going to send people out to because there's just only so many people with so much time. And that's what I'm wondering about.
So, and I know we've had this conversation before.
Yes.
I still tell people, if you have a problem, call the police department.
Yeah.
But please, I will tell you, this is what I tell our communication people, that, listen, I don't have anybody available right now, but as soon as we have someone available, we'll get them out to you. I tell that to people all the time, that come up to me. I just had somebody down on Main Street a little while ago for the Hemmings Cruise and come up to me about a problem they're having in their neighborhood. And they're like, you know how busy you guys are, and my complaint seems trivial to the work that you're doing. And I told them, listen, call. As long as you're okay with my communication people telling you, I don't have an officer available right now, we will get someone to you when we can. It really is, Marsh, comes down to communication.
The other area of question that I have that we don't need to talk about for a long time, but I know we talked about in our training, is whether there are any of the work that the officers are doing that a non-officer person might be able to carry. So that some of those calls, like the 5 hours calming somebody down in the office, or if there are parts of the work that could be carried out by people who we might be able to employ, that's something that keeps turning around in my mind.
Okay, any other?
Yeah, I've got some questions. Got a few. Okay. On the 12-hour shifts, do you know why officers would prefer a 12-hour shift?
More time off.
Okay, does that, they're working what, 8-hour shifts now?
They're working 8.5.
8.5.
4 days on, 2 days off, and they're 8.5-hour shifts.
Okay.
But right now they're working 12-hour shifts.
Would going to a 12-hour shift require kind of a radical redesign of the schedule?
Yeah, so we already have a couple of schedules that we were working with the committee. It was made up of the chief and I and 3 of the officers from the patrol division. And we had identified one schedule that would work for administration as well as it would work for the patrol division. And, you know, the one thing that we both groups, the patrol division and the administration, when we met, before we said we're going to move forward, that we had to come under the understanding is that it would benefit the officers as well as it benefited the department to make sure that we meet the needs of the community.
Right. Would a 12-hour shift cost more? Okay. Have there been any kind of studies on the effect of the extra 4 hours on duty on officer wellness or being awake or being able to respond?
There is a lot of studies on, 8 hours, 10-hour shifts, or 12-hour shifts. And it really does come down to how you manage them.
Okay.
Some of the things that I learned in some of my FBI leader training is that speaking with other agencies throughout the country that went from either an 8 or a 10-hour shift to a 12-hour shift, a lot of those departments, they reverted back to the 8-hour shift because the officers really didn't like the 12 hours as soon as they got there. And the problem was that they didn't have protections in place. So what I mean by that is that if you do, like, firemen, right? My son does a 24-hour shift and he's off like 3 days or 4 days or whatever it is. But he's got a part-time job.
Mm-hmm.
So he works, he's got his full-time job, but then he works during his days off when he should be recouping or resting or whatever. And so he's coming back to work, already working, had been working his days off, and he's working another 24, 48-hour shift. So if you put protections in place and the understanding on what the time off, what people can do during that time off, I think that it could be successful.
Would a 12-hour shift have to be part of the working agreement?
Correct.
And is a 12-hour shift, we'll say in the state of Vermont, the norm, or is it unusual?
I need to back up. The working agreement does not have to, the 12-hour shift does not have to be in the working agreement.
Okay. So is 12-hour shift kind of the industry norm, or is it unusual?
I don't know if it's an industry norm. I think there are several agencies that are around us that do the 12-hour shift. You have agencies that do hybrid schedules, some 8, some 12, but they have staffing in order to do that, so they take their 8 and they use those 8-hour shifts during hot times, when their calls are the most, and then they put the people in hotspot areas, so it all depends.
Right, okay. How do you arrive at the staffing level of 27 officers? Where do you get that number? How do you figure
That's
that
what we're
out?
budgeted for.
But I mean, why 27? Why not 20? Why not 50? How did someone come up with that?
I
That might
can't,
be more for the chief.
yeah, I can't answer where that number comes from.
Okay.
My opinion, we should be over 30.
Oh, yeah, easily. Retention. Do you find in general, when people do leave the Bennington Police Department, they're leaving to join other law enforcement agencies, or they're leaving law enforcement?
So, just from my experience, from people that left Bennington Police Department, I can tell you, just from my memory, 2 left for positions within the school district, like I already said. 2 left and went to, 3 left and went to other agencies, and 2 left and completely got out of law enforcement.
Okay, got that, okay. Are all officers required to join the union?
Yes,
They are.
you must be part of the union.
Okay.
That was in our training, right?
Yeah, you have to, yes, it's after a
All
year.
that stuff,
After they complete their trial period, they must be part of the union.
Okay. Two more. Are you aware, we'll say again, in the state of Vermont, of any municipal police departments who contract with their county sheriff's office to provide any kind of law enforcement support or activity?
I am not aware of any municipal agency that surpluses, that augments their patrol division with the sheriff's department. I can tell you that I am aware that Burlington Police Department augments their patrols with the Vermont State Police.
Okay, Vermont, okay.
But
I-
we do occasionally call them to assist with transport or something like that, don't we?
Sometimes, yes.
Yeah.
Okay. And just one more, you don't have to get too deep into this if you don't want, but I was just wondering, you're talking about a problem with recruitment and retention is this kind of negative perception out there of law enforcement these days, at least in the United States. Do you feel that the law enforcement community bears any responsibility for this burgeoning negative impression, opinion of law enforcement? And if so, should the law enforcement community be making any changes on their end of that?
Like I said before, every profession has their issues, but some, law enforcement, that just sells newspapers. It gets clicks on social media. I just had, a pretty stressful weekend. Not as stressful as the family, but no clicks on that.
And you guys absolutely, the collaboration between BPD, VSP, and the group that came in from New Hampshire, the Sheriff's Department, everybody that went out and did the searching, the people from the community, it really just, it was amazing to watch how everybody came together. And it had a horrible outcome. So thank you to everybody who supported that and for everybody who worked together on that. And you're right. We need to do a better job saying what we do right. The wins, the little wins we have to do.
I would say that moving to one of the reasons that the select board is so focused on moving into the community policing model is to hopefully change some of that public perception. And the department's been great in getting on board with that. And I think
It's tough. I didn't mean to rush.
No, it's good.
We're not in the business of selling ourselves.
Yep.
We never have been. I didn't sign up for this job for pats on the back. I didn't sign on to this job for clicks on social media. And I don't think many people do sign up for that job for this. So we did a horrible job selling ourselves. We've been doing a lot of this work. I mean, I was hired on the cops grant, way back in the 90s by, Bill Clinton, President Clinton at the time. And, so we do a horrible job selling ourselves. And you're absolutely right. That is something that the select board wanted us to change. And I think we're doing a better job. Jonah has done a great job being there for us. He's been to a couple of our trainings to get the word out, to get our message out.
So we're going to someday, when we get the complaint filed, review the anonymized summary or response to that complaint. I'm wondering if we're going to be reviewing compliments, because I think personally it would be wonderful for us and the community who hears our discussions to hear what those compliments are and to know what you're doing right and what is noticed.
And that is in the policy, so we will be getting compliments and complaints.
When we, good.
Any other questions from the board before we go to the public? Okay, so if you can come up and announce in town and speak loudly, because we don't have any acoustics. Or, well, we have lots of.
So used to do it. Yeah, the idea of community policing was on my mind.
I'm sorry, Turner, name and town, please, for Cat TV.
All
Sorry.
right, even though it doesn't go through here.
But no, but he's still
Yeah,
recording,
okay.
but I still need you to
Okay,
just.
Curtis Isselhard, Bennington.
Thank you.
Yes, I was also thinking about community policing and to what impact the fact that you're dedicated to that may have had in your recruitment and retention compared to other agencies perhaps that are not as focused on community policing.
You know, it goes back to the question, I believe, Mr. Vickers asked, community policing, it is extremely important. That's what we do. We've been doing it for years. We've never sold ourselves on this before. But that goes to what I was talking to you about, that officer, those officers that spent 5 hours with that 16-year-old person that was going through some tough times. And, it was the officers that stayed with that person. And that's what community policing is. It's just part of that. And showing that, they do care and they want to make sure that they're protecting that person's interests.
Well, telling a potential recruit that they would have an opportunity to do 5 hours might not be a recruitment tool, but that they would have an opportunity to connect the relationship.
Well, I disagree with you because that officer was with one of our new recruits, and that recruit came to me and said, I can't believe the amount of time that you guys spent with this, and she was amazed. She was just like, I can't believe that we really spent all this time and we didn't call another agency that probably should have handled it, and she was just amazed.
So I was meaning more when you were out at the job fairs.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry, I misunderstood
She
you.
was already a recruit.
Yeah.
And potential.
So we did that. At the beginning when I was talking, the chief and I went to Castleton State College, I think it's not called Castleton State College anymore, is it? State University, there you go, thank you. We took one of our new recruits with us, and that recruit gave basically a spiel, a summary of what he experienced for the hiring process and going through the academy to about 75 juniors and seniors. So, and didn't hurt that he was from that area, so. Sorry, I misunderstood what you were saying.
Any other questions for the lieutenant? Well, thank you very much.
Thank you for your
Thank
time.
you, Lieutenant.
So next on the agenda, we have the committee updates. And the first one is the Communications Committee. And I did send out the Communications Committee chart and plan. So for the purpose of discussion, can I have a motion to accept them for discussion purposes? And second? This, Will and Scott. So, Robert, would you like to talk about the communications?
Actually, I thought you would go through it because you're the one who revised it in that. So.
Okay, that's fine. So this was revised based on the feedback that we had last time. There are 2 typos in it, I will tell you, and I didn't make the lines, but if you look at the, on the communications plan on the bottom, second line from the bottom, the town's communication, it should say coordinator instead of director. And if you go to the second page, the second line down, it should say communication coordinator and the S should be removed. Any other questions, comments, concerns? get a motion to accept and to
You already
We already
have.
got that.
vote that on that?
You already have one.
Okay, can we vote on it? All those in favor of the Communications Committee charge and plan say yay?
Yay.
Aye.
Yay!
Aye. All those opposed say nay. Any abstentions? So moved. Anything else from the Communications Committee? Research Committee?
Alright, okay, that's us, March. So
Yes.
so we have the research review committee charge. Do you want me to read through it again?
It was handed out before and it's been posted,
Yep.
so that's up to
Okay,
you.
perfect. So everything is correct on this, reviewed it, the little errors were, oh, actually, there's one error here. I think maybe this was, I've never seen this before. Instead of CPARB, it's CPARB. Okay, so, but we're gonna take the extra B out of there, so just CPARB. But other than that, this is all good, all correct.
Any discussion? Motion, can I get a motion to, for the purpose of discussion, a motion to accept?
So moved.
I second.
Any discussion? Can I get a motion to accept?
Okay.
We're good.
Vote? Okay, so,
Yep.
so for all those that are in favor of the Research Review Committee charge, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed say nay. Any abstentions? So passed.
Yeah.
Anything else for the, any other updates for the research committee?
Or wait, actually, Marcia, no, that wasn't a research, no, never mind. We've not met since.
Okay. All right, so, next on the agenda is the outreach committee. Is there anything coming up for the outreach committee?
So, do you want me to discuss that one now? Okay, so for the community outreach committee, we have met, I believe, twice, one of which was with Jonas Vivek, and we went over the listening session and just got final details, kind of organized for that, which the committee
And we'll go
look
through
at.
that one
Yep.
because you have the listening sessions.
Yep,
on
so
the
that's
agenda.
pretty much all that COC's done. We're still thinking about involvement with some upcoming events that we wanted to see what the board thought about. We discussed a little bit, not too much in depth, but for Mayfest, Juneteenth, Pride Fest, 4th of July, all those events that are coming up over the next several weeks. So we want to see if we want to be involved with that, how we want to do it, if that's what path we want to take. But other than that, there's not really too much discussion. So that's all we have from COC.
Well, the flyer came out of that meeting.
Right, but we're
But
gonna
that's on the
discuss
listening
that.
session, so we'll go through that when we do that whole thing. So I think, we've talked a lot about outreach. I know we have the listening session, which is on the agenda, and hopefully we'll have some people that will come in and talk, and we'll be able to have some conversation and listen. But what about outreach in the community? We have some events coming up. We have Mayfest, like Will said, the Juneteenth celebrations coming up, the Pride Parade. Are we going to, do we want to have a presence? What would we like to do? Would we like to try to have a booth? Would we like to just attend? Are there any thoughts on any of this?
My initial thought, and it's just a thought, is that we've got enough right now trying to get the listening session put together. I'm not excited about getting involved with other events between now and then, but outreach is always good. If we wanted to, have a booth at Mayfest, I'll be there. Whatever we want to do, I'll participate.
I guess, would participation, my initial thought was similar, would it be competing with or doing this similar thing as the listening session, or would it be to help promote that, maybe drive people to attend the listening session and then just understanding what the real purpose of the other things may be? I don't know.
Well, I think preliminarily, at least, I think we were discussing using it as a way to promote the
Okay.
community listening
Yeah,
session.
awareness.
Yeah, but I mean, I think even after the listening session, and like Robert said, that's a very good point, that we don't want to overload ourselves, and we don't want to get anyone to do the listening session. We don't want that to take away from it, so, yeah.
And I would agree with both of those, that trying to find a balance with that, because part of, we have some very loyal supporters over here, people who watch on Cat TV, which is great. And it would be great to be out where people are, so that people see what we do, and it's amazing all the conversations we get into. Oh, you're from CPARB, so what is that? And, oh, I have this experience, and then the door opens for a conversation that may be helpful to promote what we're trying to do, which is two-way communication. So trying to find our balance with that seems important.
I think it's important to get out into the community. I think, we can't expect the community to come to us. I
Right.
think we need to get out there and be visible.
So I agree with that.
Jim?
Hi, if I could throw Cat TV under the bus. During Mayfest, we do our live broadcast, which will be broadcast on both our channels and on our Facebook page. If you'd like to have a representative come talk about what CPARB has been doing, what's going on, promote the listening session. I think the hours between 12:30 and 1:30, get a hold of Mike Cutler, mike@catamountAccess.com. He's my boss. He will be more than happy to take your email, and he'll be more than happy to tell me, why did you do this?
He's been wonderful.
He has.
Does anybody want to?
I think you need to do that if it was to happen, because you're our spokesperson.
Okay.
All right. So if I contact Mike Cutler, will somebody be there to speak to him?
I'll pay
Are you
there.
gonna be
Yeah,
there?
I know you said you got there.
So I didn't need a motion on that? No, okay, all right, so, okay. Anything else on upcoming community events or anything else from outreach? Next on the agenda is the community listening session. So, Will, do you want to start with that?
Let's see. Or do you want us to talk about the flyer first, or what we've been discussing?
Whatever you'd like to start with.
So, well, this is, yeah, I was gonna say here, let's start with the flyer. Oh, that one's in color, right?
I did one.
Well, the color, yeah, the color helps it a little bit, but I have to say, I'm not really, the fonts that are in blue, I think that can be a little, it's not a super, I want to say, I mean, it's just not the best font to use. Just my thought, I think it might be hard for some people to read it, even though it looks simplistic, but I can send some of the fonts to Jonah for him to look at.
It says Bennington Firehouse, but no address, and I think most people know, there are multiple firehouses, so we have an address. And then I know, we probably don't want to put a cap on it, but being that there's no end time, if somebody's tied up from 6 to 6:30, how late is too late to show up if they don't want to be here precisely at 6? Is there something that would indicate it's 6 to 8 or 6 to 10, or, I don't know, but I don't want to artificially shorten it, but also,
We'll give that to Jim.
I don't know, just as a thought.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, my other question about the listening session is the agenda. So we have not come up with a formal agenda, and I guess this is a question for Tom. Can we do the agenda after this meeting and before the listening session, or does that agenda have to be approved?
So we have a retreat
Okay, yeah.
on Saturday, and the agenda was kind of lined out
Okay.
last month.
Yep.
And I just want to, before we get off of this,
Yep.
So the free refreshments and the free childcare.
Yep.
So we're working on refreshments, and we are working on getting childcare. Tom, have we heard anything back on that?
No, not yet.
Okay.
I spent some time in conversation with Stu yesterday, and I haven't heard back anything final yet.
Okay. So what we're
I'll
working.
chase him down again. I'll chase him down again.
Okay. So there's a program that the YMCA does where they'll do a drop-in program for childcare. They call it a drop-in program. And if it's something that we can do, the only thing that they ask is that parents who are going to bring children would pre-register ahead of time because they do need to be in their system. But if there are any walk-ins, they can also register them at that time. It just takes a couple of minutes to get them into the system, so they really like to reduce the number of walk-ins and slowing that down. But they will come with activities, 2 staff people, and they can be there from 6 to 8. If we need them a little bit early to set up, we just have to get the confirmation and get back to them.
And that would be here?
They will come here.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they will come here. Apparently they did this before when the PFOA meetings were in the building. And it is something that they would do. And I think this is a great opportunity because I had talked with some of the parents at Head Start about the listening session, and childcare is a concern for them to be able to come. So
Should we, if pre-registering is desired, should we say free childcare, pre-register at wherever?
A pre-register requested.
Or any other, pre-register at
yeah.
whatever address, phone number.
And this can always be changed. Even if this goes out next week and we decide that we're going to word something different or we're going to add something different to it next month, it can always be changed and added and modified.
Now, I'd be careful that we don't make promises in the first one that we then have.
So we'll find out. Yeah, that we'll get the confirmation on the childcare before that goes out.
And so if I could ask maybe Will, I don't know, do you have, are we going to ask Jonah to change the fonts? And if so, into what?
Well, I was gonna say, I have a list of fonts that are most optimal for situations like this, because I've used them before, so. Yeah, I was gonna say, you can go online and find a font meister. Yeah.
Okay, so,
I don't know.
Well, I was gonna say, I got a little concerned, but I mean, no offense, Jonah, I just, that was the first thing that popped to my mind. But I'll run it by him, but you know what, I'm sure he knows about some more than I do, so I'm not gonna.
but as far as content, are we good with content?
I feel good with content when I reviewed it, yeah.
Okay, we just need to clarify the child care part. We're going to look at adding the address and an end time. Did I miss anything else? And the font.
And you said the time?
The end time.
Yeah, just put like 6 to 8
8, yeah.
p.m. I think people like that.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
So, well, just so that you know, when I saw this, the fonts caught my attention.
Oh,
And
sure.
one of my principles for making posters is you have 3 seconds
Right.
to get the attention and your message. And I saw the 2 different strange fonts, and my eyes zoomed right through them.
Right.
And thought, what's that? And then I read it. So
Yeah.
just,
Well, no, you're right. No, the
I
one
know.
font I thought was really good. I don't know about the other though. It didn't catch my attention. That's the thing. It's different for everyone. But
Yes.
if we keep it, or if he keeps it that way, totally fine. Not gonna.
just my 2 cents. That's all.
All right, so we're good with the flyer. Next.
About the community.
Let me ask, if I could ask this of Tom. We had talked about, I don't know how to phrase it, I'll just say police presence at this thing. Is there a cost to that?
Not that I've been made aware of.
Okay.
Cam?
Oh, he's still
Are you going to charge us when you come to the listening session? Is there a fee?
$8.
Yeah.
Triple time?
I can't answer that, I'll be cheap side.
Okay.
We'll find out.
We could hire the sheriff's department.
You have to go to the bus first. And then
There's a rotation record.
I'll get an answer, say by Tuesday morning on the childcare question.
Okay.
Now that we've discussed it in an open meeting, I have a lot more leverage.
Okay. All right. Okay.
Much else unless you want to go over what we've done. So, as we've discussed, I don't know if we would phrase this as the purpose or the goal, but we're definitely wanting to see if we get those questions for that September survey from this listening session. But details about what we're wanting to do in the listening session, I mean, we've discussed these at the past meetings. So let's see, I'll just kind of walk through it, but we're planning, and if people want changes to this, I mean, it's open to amendment, but we're wanting to do history and introduction to CPARB, kind of how we've gotten to the point where we're at, kind of the members introducing themselves. We're wanting to discuss we had a few questions that we kind of want to get from people through interactive groups that we're trying to organize and see how we exactly want to implement that. And let's see, and I think it's safe to say this, but we've decided this is going to be a fully in-person event. There's going to be no Zoom component other than Cat TV is going to record it for view after, correct, Kelly? Yep.
Oh,
And-
No, Cat TV is live.
Oh, it's going to be
Cat
live.
TV
Oh,
is
it's going to be
live.
live. Sorry. But there's going to be no Zoom in options, and that's the, okay. So that, and then in terms of advertising for it, we have a plan for how we want to release it to the banner and to other news organizations and how, and kind of the timelines for when we want to do that. And then, I think, yeah, we emphasize refreshments, location, yeah. I think that's all I have, at least from that.
Now that we have the communications committee in place, they'll take over the timeline with Joan with the publicity and all of that stuff.
Towards that end, is there a way for the chair to let Jonah know that the communications committee will be dealing with him directly as opposed to everything having to be coordinated through the chair?
Well, the communications committee will deal with them, but it still has to be brought to the whole board when there's things outside of that.
But
Yep.
we can go
Yeah, I'll
and
talk
sit
about it,
down and
yes.
talk.
Yeah. And we may have to look at the communications committee after we get our new member.
Right. Or new member.
Not that much.
Yeah. 6 seems like that. And also, I don't know if we've done this yet or not. Have we thought in terms of like a mission statement for the listening session, what we want and what we're going to do with whatever we get?
Well, we've emphasized what we want to do with it. Remember, the end goal in a way is to hopefully use this to craft questions for that survey so we can elicit more information from the public on that.
Right, that's only 2 questions.
So I don't know which one this is because I cut it off.
Oh.
But in one of our meetings, in the minutes, we actually have from Ryan, I think this was when Ryan was here, but the 3 broad areas of focus were to introduce CPARB and establish a relationship with the police and the community, empower attendees to feel heard, and set the stage for future work where community members being heard and belonging. And we're hoping for, excuse me, some possible outcomes to identify possible collaborative trust-building actions with BPD and hear people's hopes for CPARB. And then some of the questions that we had in the prior month meetings. What is important for CPARB to know or understand? What are your personal experiences with the police? What made them positive or negative or both? What do you think collaborative community policing is? We also talked about if you could do one small thing better to make policing in Bennington better, what would it be? And what would you like to see CPARB or the town do? So this was what we had, and I want to say it was our March meeting.
Yeah, those were the 3.
So on here, it kind of talks about it, but it does say, share your experiences, suggest solutions, provide input. I guess, do those 3 bullets explain all of that? Should they be revised or add more, or I don't know, does it, I guess, do that? And then do we have a separate thing, or do we try to include it on?
I think what's out there is probably adequate for a flyer. What I'm getting at is what are we going to do? So we get input, and we get their experiences, and we get all this, and now we have it all. What do we do with it, you know?
Well, I think that that's going to determine some of our future work. It's going to determine who we bring in for future speakers. It's going to hopefully help us determine some questions for the town survey. It may help us determine future forum topics, future survey questions. I think it's an opportunity for us to get a lot of information, just because what we think the community might want, we might be totally off base. They may want something totally different, and they may have some fantastic suggestions and some concerns, and I think, you know, to come in, we're gonna, you know, the big thing is to at least introduce, get our first event with the community, and then see where that leads us.
And I agree with all that, and think that what you just said, that it's really important for the community to find out whether they really do something with what they put in. Because sometimes we have surveys and nothing happens. And that definitely will shoot us in the foot twice. So.
And we did talk about having a listening session in June, having a recap in July, with some, hopefully some goals, and it is something we will have to follow up on and do that. But it's at least a start to get information.
Great.
Anything else?
Scott? Good.
Any other questions, comments, concerns?
Sounds good.
Next up is collaborative community policing and a discussion on a possible future public forum. And this came from a presentation that Marsh is working on. Marsh and I had a conversation months ago about collaborative community policing, and it's something he's very passionate about. So, you know, one of the things that we talked about earlier is that perception, the negative perception with the police. And part of our charge is to help bridge the gap, you know, build the trust. So one thing that we can do is take a look at the collaborative community policing. What is it? How does it, you know, apply to Bennington? So Marsh had talked about this, and we said something about trying to do some kind of an educational session within the meetings. Maybe 1 or 2, possibly 3 quick segments on it, maybe 30 minutes or so each, with time for questions and answers. But once he got going on with the project, it's quite lengthy, and it may be consideration for an event on its own rather than trying to fit it into a meeting in different segments. So, Marsh, if you want to explain that, and then we can talk about whether the board thinks it should be incorporated into our meetings going forward, or whether it should be something that has a forum just to discuss.
I think it could be done either way, fully. Myself, what was of interest to me was what is collaborative community policing? What has happened? And it's been interesting to explore, because a lot of things, as Cam mentioned, are already happening. And it's really exciting to look over all the things the police department has been up to, both over a number of years and recently as well. And I think there's been a really uptake in my perception. Of course, you've been here longer and seen it more intimately, but I think there's been a real uptake in working with the community and collaboratively with other agencies. In the last year and a half, it's been really astounding. But also there are areas where we haven't explored, and there are things to learn about and decide do we want to focus on trying to move in those directions. And part of it is, you know, we don't have a huge amount of staff, to say the least. So, you know, how quickly we can move into new areas, particularly in problem solving and engaging the community in looking at what's behind the crime that we're seeing and working together to identify what are the most concerning things and how do we approach them together as a community. So I think either format could be good. You know, we could take a piece at a time, but you're concerned about keeping them focused on the meeting itself, and I think that's good too.
I was concerned because the presentation you sent me had 175 slides, and I just
Sure.
thought it was way too much for a meeting.
Yeah.
And even if you take 175 slides and you don't, you know, you put it into 3 or 4, you're still looking at 30 or 40 slides per meeting if you were going to do that. And I just think that that is a lot to try to get in to one of our meetings. And I think if with something like that, it might be better just to say, you know, maybe this should be its whole, our next forum, and maybe we should look at this in the fall, and maybe take some information from hopefully what we'll get in June, and use it to even build on what you did. So that was my thought, but whatever the board, you know, decides to do is fine. It's just that that big presentation needs to be broken down into manageable pieces.
And engaging pieces,
and
so we
engaging
can stop and
pieces. Correct.
discuss and explore and identify, okay, now we've looked at 10 things, what things really stand out to you, what stands out to the community, so it might be a great session by itself, and using some teamwork and scheming out what would make the most interesting and engaging.
I think it should be a
Tom?
full.
Marcia, have you actually mocked this? Have you ever practiced it and seen how long it takes?
Sure. So the first, there are like 5 sections of it, something like that. And each one is about a 15-minute thing, something of that sort. So I've recorded like the first fifth or quarter of it was about 15 minutes.
Okay.
But that does not include interactions. So,
Right.
so you know, if we stop and talk about how does this affect us, what do we like about this, what's already going on, what would really be nice if we could do it. Yep.
I think it should be a forum. I think we could get a lot more out of it if it was a standalone thing.
Mm-hmm.
We could invite people, you know, the agency heads, stuff like that, people with specific interests in this, get them together and show them the thing. Can I ask Cam a question? Hello? You don't have to get up if you can hear me.
I'm doing work while I'm listening.
I probably should know this already, and I don't know. You know, we're talking about community policing. Is that just a philosophy and a word we're kicking around, or is that like a policy and procedure? Is that a program currently being enacted by the Bennington Police Department?
Community policing has been around for years.
Yes, the idea.
Like I said earlier, I was hired on the cops grant, which was basically a community-based oriented grant from the federal government. That's how I got my position with the sheriff's department. I was a community policing hire officer, right? Yeah, that was what I was hired to do. And you know, just kind of, we all do community policing every single day. Sometimes the calls take us away from that, but community policing, like going down to the river walkway and just talking to people, that's community policing. Walking down on, you know, Main Street and shaking hands, that's community policing. Going over to the school with a popsicle trailer and handing out pops, that's community policing.
But is
So
that
I want to
all?
get back on track here, just because that's not what we're talking about. That's what, when we get to the forum, that's what we'll do. But just as an FYI, on the website, on the BPD website, there is a policy on collaborative community
Okay.
policing that Marsh helped write.
Okay, that's what I was.
So that, we'll get that for, you know.
So it is a policy.
It is a policy, it's on, and I would suggest, I would recommend for those of you who haven't seen it, to definitely pull it and take a look at it.
That's what I was trying
Well,
to. Thank you.
Well, no, I was gonna comment a little bit on what you said, but elaborate that it is a policy and that it is kind of the practices of it are implemented, but there are models of policing, because we see that in community policing models where it's really that, like you said, oriented, it's the orientation of how the department responds to it, because we have problem-oriented policing, we have hotspot-oriented policing, you know, there's different things, and they all have their merits and demerits, but, you know, we just have that's the path we're trying to head on, because we think it would be the most applicable to our situation. So it's,
So do we think in a forum, or do we think?
for now, I'm gonna agree with Robert. I think a forum's gonna be the best for this, because I think it's gonna lead to more in-depth discussion, and for the fact that there's so much content that we're trying to get to. And I think maybe doing a 10-minute recap, you know, every meeting or something on that forum, if it's a one-time forum or if it's a series, like you said, there's 5, you know, we might want to do several of them, then we do a recap. But like if it's a one-time thing, we might do a 20 or 25-minute recap on everything.
I'd just like to ask him a little question. Do you think you or the chief would like to collaborate with Marsh on this presentation to see that it's in sync with what
Robert,
you're
we'll talk
already
about
doing?
this after.
Well, and I already asked the chief if he would
Okay.
be happy to comment and participate in the discussion during when it's presented. So it's not just one person saying their 2 cents, who happens to have been involved in policing for a year or 2. You guys have got a lot of knowledge about what worked, didn't work, et cetera. So that would definitely be important.
Okay.
Yeah, I knew that you communicated, and I didn't want to overstep the answer. I don't have that answer, so I didn't want to, I knew they communicated.
Okay, good. That's all I wanted.
I didn't know the outcome.
Yeah, great.
All right, so, Scott? Jeff?
I agree with Robert, it should be done in a forum. If we try to break it, if it's 5 sections, we break that out in 1 section per meeting. Now you're doing this presentation over 5 months, and by the time we get to month 3, I'm not gonna remember a thing from month 1, so it would be much better to digest it all at once and kind of go over it at just one time.
I like the idea of doing the forum. I also like the idea that it gives us a next community event to work towards. So there's a plan going forward, and you may even be able to fit some recap from the listening session into
Add
that.
that in, yeah.
That might even fit in there nicely.
Mhm.
So, all right. So can I get a motion for,
You don't need
no,
to.
okay, that's good.
Just-
All right.
any,
So that's it. Any other comments on the possible forum?
nope.
Okay. Upcoming agenda items. So a couple of things, just to let everybody know. Next month, our next meeting will be June 22nd. And Lorna Matern, who is the director from UCS, will be here talking about UCS's relationship and interactions with BPD.
Great.
And also, depending on how things play out with some current investigations, next month we may have the BPD talking about different policies and processes and procedures that happened throughout the arrest process, and taking a look at those. That may not happen in June, it may end up being in July. And if that does, then BPD will be in, and the plan right now is to talk about some of the new statutory regulations that went in with the legislature ending their session, and some of the changes. So that will probably be coming up in June with UCS, unless the other investigations are done, and then we'll talk about some of the other policies and processes.
Question. Did you say June 22nd?
Is that right? Is that the
That's the
Thursday?
third Thursday?
Is ours
It's the
the
15th.
Oh, sorry, June 15th, sorry.
Because the first happens to fall.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
Do we have a complement yet that would be ready for review, or haven't we had any come in yet?
We haven't gotten any yet.
We haven't gotten any compliments?
We haven't gotten the reports yet, the reports up, so.
And it's up to the chief to send that to us, so when
Right.
he's ready to,
He'll give it to us regularly. They're still putting, Mr. Cage is still getting everything straightened out, and then we should be getting it shortly. Anything else for upcoming agenda items that anybody else has? Saturday, we have our retreat on Saturday. That will start at noon. Brian will be available from 11 to 12 for one-on-one questions.
And that's here.
That's here. That's here.
Kelly, is that in this room?
Pardon me?
Is it going to be in this room or the conference room?
I'd like to start in the conference room.
Downstairs.
Conference room.
On the second floor?
Yeah. And I do need to ask you how to get the building open.
I can show you that. I can come open the building.
Thank you. Slight technicality. All right. So no other upcoming agenda items from anybody else? Okay. So the next agenda item is the last agenda item is announcements. So before I go to the board for the rest of the announcements, I just want to again reiterate, we have our listening session on June 29th in the multi-purpose room right here at the Firehouse, 137 River Street. And it starts at 6 o'clock, and we hope that people will come and join us and give us your thoughts so that we can work to meet your needs. The other thing I wanted to talk about, just to make everybody aware, May is Mental Health Awareness Month. So I just hope that everybody takes a step back, takes a deep breath, and takes a look and takes care of yourself. And if you know someone who is struggling, please reach out to them and let them know that there is help. There's plenty of services around in the community. We're very fortunate. We have some great agencies. But please take care of everybody. And I know that I've mentioned a couple of times with BPD, and I'd like to thank our other first responders, because there has been so much trauma locally the last few months between the ODs, the suicides, and I'll tell you, I live in the middle of the chaos, so I hear all the sirens and the gunshots, and I see all the drug deals, and the rest of the trauma and the horror that goes with that. So I worry about the community, and I worry about the people that see that, and I worry about our officers and our rescue squad and our fire department and EMTs and all of our first responders, our teachers, our students, our kids, our community. So I just encourage everyone, you are worth it. Thank you for everything, and please take a moment to take care of yourself, because this is Mental Health Awareness Month. So, and that's all I have for announcements, so we'll start with Scott. Do you have anything?
No. Good. No. Nope. Nothing today, Chief.
Nothing? Comment? The comment? I put announcements on for the comment.
What's that? No.
Just a reminder, on our webpage, there is a comment section, so if you have something, a comment, a compliment, a concern, please fill it out and send it to us. It does come to me, and then when I do get them, I do send them out, and we do try to reply unless it's anonymous. And if it's anonymous, I still send it out. I just obviously can't reply. So.
And what's the link we have on our page to the police department run summary, or there's something on our webpage that you can click and see. I haven't even looked at it, so I'm not sure what it is. But
I'm sorry, Robert.
Okay,
I'm not sure what you're talking
yeah,
about.
I'm not sure what it takes to do something. Not the way to do it.
We'll look forward to it.
Yeah, it's. I didn't think it up. Somebody told me so.
Okay.
It's like you can see the list of runs they've made over some period of time or so.
The traffic data is there.
Ah,
The traffic data is there. Yeah, that's been there for a while.
Yeah.
22 won't be out until August.
Okay.
But
Can you
20 and
tell-
21, those are all there. They've been there for.
Can you just tell the people what it is, what we're talking about?
Oh, the traffic data has been posted on the BPD website. There is a link on our webpage for it. I can't tell you exactly what it says off the top of my head. But the traffic data for the past few years is out. 2022 will be released in August. I believe is what the chief has said at the other meetings. But you can correct me if I'm wrong, but that'll be out later this year.
Okay, great, thanks. Yeah. Sorry, I was so confused.
If there's nothing else, can I get a motion to adjourn?
Make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second that.
Can we say aye? All those in favor of adjourning, say aye.
Yay.
Yay! We are not on fun. All those opposed, say nay. very much for your time